This podcast is sponsored by Pogo, Property Operations on the Go. Facility managers know how challenging it can be to keep everything running smoothly. That's why Pogo was created, a white-labeled software solution designed by property managers for property managers. Pogo is your ultimate all-in-one platform for managing multiple assets. With Pogo, you communicate with your tenants, manage maintenance requests, control property access, manage bookable spaces, and much more. Plus, with advanced analytics, Pogo empowers you to optimize your operations anytime, anywhere. The best part? Pogo is completely customizable to fit your brand and business. Simplify your operations, enhance tenant satisfaction, and save money with Pogo. Ready to make the switch? Visit gopogo.us to schedule your demo today. Pogo, one system, multiple solutions at your fingertips. Well, hello, everyone. I'm Mark Beffert, bringing you relative discussions with leaders in the commercial real estate industry. Today is our first podcast. We're going to have a podcast every other week. So we're going to deliver you 26 podcasts a year talking about the commercial real estate industry. I'm really honored today to have Gary Brooks with me. Gary's one of my best friends and initial partner in the real estate business way back when we started.
Way back.
Yeah, 1996. I was actually trying to think, when did we actually first meet?
So 96 is when we started Beffert Brooks, but we met in 89.
89. And you were representing Oklahoma City
Yeah,
Clinic.
there you go. Yeah.
I remember that.
I was an accountant, had selling Range Rovers, knew that's not what I wanted to do, got into commercial real estate, was working for a small firm here, went 9 months with no check, which my wife wasn't very fond of. We'd only been married about a year.
By the way, your wife is still my CFO.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
She chose to stay with you rather than go with me in 2006.
I'm not
which
sure that's the case.
Ended
She
up
chose
being
both
a
of us. How's
great
that?
move.
Yeah.
I appreciate you doing that. So it was probably toward the end of 89. I was representing Oklahoma City Clinic. You had the land, and that was my first deal.
Yeah.
Was struggling. Those were hard times back then. And at some point, I don't remember, at some point within a few weeks, you and I were meeting, and you kind of dropped the idea about coming to work with you at CB Commercial. And my recollection is I was in the cube next to you the next day.
I think that's right. That's right.
You had already established yourself. We were both the same age, probably 27. The market had already established that you were one of the up-and-coming leaders. I was brand new in the business. So
That was only because I had started before you.
Yeah, you probably were 5 years ahead of me.
5 years into it,
Yeah, research and then doing brokerage.
Started in E4.
So I jumped on that opportunity, moving into a cube at CB, working with you. That was an easy call.
It's been great ever since. So let's get into talking about real estate, how to build a real estate company and the legacy. Talk a little bit about the highs and the lows and some of the things that we like that we did, and things we would change, and maybe some regrets that maybe we have. But the markets are ever changing, and especially in the last 5 years. This is a different world today. So let's dig into to some of those things.
Great.
So one of the key things that I've experienced over the last 4 years is flexibility in everything that you do. Flexibility in your business environment, flexibility in even your real estate developments and investments. What is one significant challenge that you have faced that required you to be flexible, and how were you able to adapt to that?
Well, I think back when we first started, unfortunately, most businesses, the way I describe it, you build the airplane in the air. You don't get to do it on the ground, which is always a challenge. So you're trying to build this thing, you're trying to fly it, you're trying to figure out how do we survive. The first big challenge I remember for us was just we grew pretty fast, pretty early. And those first couple of years, we were growing fast. And how do you be flexible in that? How do you adjust? For me, you were the main producer. I'm trying to figure out how to run this business. Wasn't a good leader, had to learn how to be flexible in that.
Do you remember the time that we represented Hollywood Video? Neither one of us had done a real estate transaction, but we're representing him around Oklahoma City. We got in the car. We needed to go to Yukon to show a site. Neither one of us really knew how to get to Yukon.
Yeah,
So we went to Yukon down 39th Street instead of getting on I-40 to go look at a site. It took us like 45 minutes to get there. Remember that?
I hadn't thought about this in a long time. We'd found a site somewhere on the south side, and we're driving him around, and I'm showing him the site, and he turned around and he's like, "What about that corner there at that shopping center with the drive-through that's vacant? That might be a good opportunity."
Might be a good spot.
So yeah, we were winging it in those early days. Well, that was retail. We didn't have much experience in that, so you got to adjust. You got to be flexible. For me, I've learned to embrace change. A lot of people don't enjoy that. So I've always considered that something that was a strength for me.
Why do you think our relationship worked early on? And think about it. We started young in our career. We worked together. You left and went to work at a different firm. We've remained very close. And then you ended up having an opportunity to get into the investment world. Won't go through the details of that. And that went for 3 or 4 years, and you had to clean up a few messes there. And that's when you then got into and started Cornerstone Development. But we have remained friends and respect each other immensely and support each other in all of our ventures. Why do you think that's worked for us?
Yeah, we've never talked about this. I'll give you my answer, and then you need to give me yours. Early on, I came into CB working with you, and even when we started our firm, I was still pretty green. But Mark, you had a pace that people just couldn't keep up with. And I think one of the reasons it worked is I was able to keep up with you.
You were, absolutely.
I was able to manage your pace. I mean, gosh, when we were in cubes at CB, I can remember the old rule, last one in had to buy breakfast. Well, we didn't have a lot of money back then. And so, like,
you got in early.
I can remember getting off the elevator at Leadership Square at 5:15 in the morning and thinking, there's no chance he's here. And I see the light on in the back, and I'm like, you got to be kidding me.
You remember what I used to say to you? And you said, hey, what time you getting in the morning? What I used to say?
Something about backing up.
I said, make it easy on yourself.
Make it easy on yourself.
Make it easy on yourself.
So I bought a lot of bagels in those early days. But I think that it's one of the things that connected us. You and I were able to run at a pace that sometimes got us in trouble. I think we pulled more than one all-nighter, and staff stayed, and the girls were mad at
Remember
us.
that?
And whew.
That was for what tenant? Back Oklahoma.
Oh gosh, good
It
memory.
was a 25,000 square foot lease. We spent all night preparing that lease, modifying it, redlining it, and got it to the point because we needed to get it signed that next day.
Yeah,
It's crazy. It's crazy.
I think that anchored us probably in a way that kept us aligned.
Yeah, I think so too. I think we had equal passion, and we trusted one another. And I think that's the key, passion and trust. And I knew that I didn't have to worry about what you're doing or that you weren't going to carry your load. And you're one of the most honorable men I know, Gary. And that's one of the things that have brought me really close to you. You actually gave me some faith that I, at one point, never had. So I think we got a deep bond, a lot of friends.
Well, partnerships are hard. Mm-hmm. And now that I've got a lot of experience with them, good and bad, I tell people, I go, look, people change, things change. You know, people go through things in their family, in their marriage, their goals in life change. So when you partner with someone, don't think that they're not going to wake up in 10 years and want to do something different, and you're not. Mm-hmm. I tell this story occasionally. I don't tell it very often because I don't have permission from you, but I only remember you and I arguing over two things in our entire time we were together. And one of them was early on, we weren't making any money. And I don't remember how much the check came in. You wanted me to take it. I wanted you to take it. And that's just kind of how we operated. And like you argued over who should take the money. I think it's just kind of how you and I thought. I knew you were critical to our success. You had sacrificed. And I won't talk about the other thing we argued over. But.
Well, okay, let's get into the world of real estate. Let's talk about investments and development. So, what's one of your best investment decisions you've made, small or big?
Oh, gosh.
It helped shape your career.
2008, you remember 2008? Terrible. Mm-hmm. I'd done one deal. I'd built one apartment project in Lawton. Probably was under construction. I'm not even sure we were very far along. Andy Burnett had 3 apartment projects listed. They were a package. It was a package that Mike Henderson had built back in the 70s. Guy to California owned them, and Andy was selling them. 1,013 units. We called it 1013. Andy called me, said, "Hey, you interested?" And I said, "Yeah, I'd look at it." Well, the first meeting, he said, "Mike Case had this under contract and walked." And I looked at him, I go, "Mike Case knows a lot more than I do about apartments. So if he walked, I don't need to look at it."
I'm out.
Yeah, I don't need to. There's nothing I see. Yeah. Well, Mike Henderson called me. He said, "Hey, you really need to look at that." And I'm like, "Mike, I'm not interested." Well, it kept coming up. And I ended up meeting with Roy Townsend, who was one of Mike's big investors. And I remember I had 7 things written in my journal. If these 7 things happened, I would consider that a sign I'm supposed to move ahead. Roy said, "I'm in. He put up quite a bit of the $9 million that we needed to buy it. Well, we ended up closing on that in 2009, which timing could not have been better. Today, if someone brought me that deal and won my opinion, I'd find 20 reasons not to do it.
Yeah.
But it ended up, like, we made 4 or 5 times on our money. So,
well, I can see that deal probably put you at a different level. Buying a 1,400 units at that level, at that period of time, in that year, that's a big transaction. So let's talk about a deal that you wish you had pursued that you didn't.
Yeah, that's a good question. 2 things come to mind. One of them I never could have done, but it's one that I would have loved to have done.
Now, wait a second. You took on one of the biggest projects in the history of Oklahoma. So there's nothing that you can do in the First National.
No, this one I can't. The Biltmore Hotel.
Okay.
Remember the old Biltmore?
Well, at Meridian and I-40.
No. The old Biltmore downtown.
Oh yeah.
They knocked down in the 70s.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah.
Before I got in the business, but I remember seeing pictures of it. 600 room.
Yeah, got it.
Like, man, if that thing was still around, that would have been fun. One, I'm not sure I passed on one. I tell you a project that I never pursued that I wished I would have. Mm-hmm. Maybe that's a better way to phrase it.
Yeah.
You may not remember this, but 2006, Tom McDaniel was president of OCU, asked me to be a project manager on the OCU boathouse.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So Mike Knopp, the king of the river, Rand Elliott, and I went to Boston. And we toured all the boathouses on the Charles River at Harvard, cool. MIT, because Mike rowed there. He was a rower in Boston in college. So he got us in all the boathouses. And we were there to try to put together a plan to build this boathouse.
Yeah.
The only thing at the river was Chesapeake at the time, the little Chesapeake boathouse. And I remember coming back, and Rand called me and said, "Hey, get Mike, come to my office." And typical Rand, he rolls out on this sheet of paper, 20-foot long master plan of the river, just boathouses and lights. And I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, that's unbelievable. I would have loved to pursue multi-housing on the river.
On the river.
Yeah, there's just so much opportunity.
You may get an opportunity because I think that is one of the gems of our city that will ultimately get developed. So, what's your greatest regret?
Oh, gosh.
From a development or investment standpoint that you wish you hadn't have done?
Well,
You may be better off today.
people would say, do you regret First National? No, I don't at all. Look, you know me at least 35 years, maybe longer. I just don't have regrets. You know, I live by the all things work together for good for those who love the Lord and are called according to his purpose. So I try to do the second half so the first half does well. And I just don't look back. But I'll tell you a regret I have. I'm kind of surprised I'm going to tell you this. We're not talking. Nobody's listening, right?
Everybody's listening and watching.
First National was obviously the biggest decision I made. And I remember meeting with some of my key investors on other projects. I had a lot of other projects, a lot of investors, a lot of investor money. And I had somehow convinced myself that I could maintain focus on all my other investments. And I remember sitting with one of my big investors. I won't name him because everybody knows him. And he looked at me like, you're crazy. Like, you've convinced yourself of this and there's no chance. And I did. I believe that. I did not handle that well at all. That's my biggest regret in my career.
Yeah,
is
got it.
that
I get
I was naive to our earlier point about partnerships. I went a direction that people who had invested tens and millions of dollars with me didn't count on, and it impacted them.
Yeah, so you feel like maybe you weren't at that point in time a good fiduciary to them in the investments that they had trusted you with. Because
No question.
you felt like that would still be okay because it may be on easy street. It doesn't take that much time. I can go do this also.
Sure.
And,
yeah.
And
maybe it might even benefit them. Who knows what I convinced myself of?
well, the next thing I wanted to ask you is, what is one mistake or a mistake that you see young people make today in the commercial real estate industry?
Well, my old guy answer is, they don't work smart enough.
We are boomers.
Yeah.
I was thinking these days I go into a room. Most of the time I'm the old guy. And I did clearly have in my mind, I was always the youngest guy.
Sure.
The tables have definitely turned.
Yeah. I don't want to go down this rabbit trail because I have a different answer for you, but there's so much more ability to be prepared before you meet with someone now. I met with the president of a pharmaceutical firm last week who was in town from Chicago, and I literally uploaded 12 newspaper articles, their website, and a Notebook LM, and in 15 minutes I had a 20-minute podcast and knew more about him and his business before I ever met with him. Just think about the ability to use these tools now that we just didn't have. So the one thing I caution younger people on, Oklahoma City's the smallest 1.4 million MSA city in the country. We all know each other.
Yeah.
You got one shot, meaning don't mess your reputation up.
Right.
Even competitors, we're all friends. We all know each other. What do we say? You either know them or you're one phone call away from anyone. And so I just tell people, I go, don't make a mistake. Don't do something short term that could impact you 20 years down the road, because this city will remember.
Yeah, I agree 100% because we're only as good as our reputation, the relationships we have. And back to your first point, I agree 100% with you. The ability to get information today at a moment's notice is easy. What I think people today don't do is really understand about adding value with that information. Anybody can have the information, but how do you articulate that and communicate that to help make better informed decisions is what separates those apart. And if you think you're going to come into the office at 9 and leave at 3 and take an hour lunch and be able to articulate that and be depth within the marketplace, you're wrong. You're not working at this firm.
Yeah,
So it is I mean, it's critical.
You might remember this. Years ago, you and I had a training for brokers, especially the young guys, because we were bringing in a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I remember telling them, if you'll treat commercial real estate like you do law school or getting a doctorate, they go, what do you mean? Work 8, 9, 10 hours a day, and then go home at night and study
Yeah.
for 3 years. You might make it.
Yeah.
Because you taught me how to respect the business.
Yeah.
I didn't make money for the first year, so I had to respect it. Then I got with you, and I learned to even respect the business more. You always had such a high degree of respect for how hard it was. That's what I tell young people. I go, if you want to treat this like an 8 to 5, you might make it. If you get lucky and you get somewhere and they're going to write you a paycheck. But if you want to become a serious broker that's respected in this town, your first 3 years, you've got to look at it like I'm working 8, 9 hours a day, then I'm going to go study for another 5 or 6.
That's right. Yeah. Frankly, the kiss of death. If you do a big deal your first year in their career, you will not make it. You will not be here 5 to 10 because you think it's easy.
It would have happened to me. We saw it happen so many times.
So many times. Absolutely.
Yeah. I hated not making money that first year, but I would have been a statistic.
Yeah. Okay, so Gary, we've been through a lot of cycles. We've been doing this since the early 80s. We started in the worst downturn this city has ever experienced in the mid 80s. What is the toughest cycle? Not that first one we experienced, because frankly, I didn't know what a tough. That's just the basis.
Didn't know.
And frankly, I think it was a blessing for us to be in that cycle and have to dig our way through and make it from the beginning. So I feel fortunate that we had that. Since that point, what's the toughest cycle we've been through?
Well, yeah, I agree with you. It'd be much harder. I have actually warned some of my younger, really sharp friends in the business, when you haven't seen a downside yet. They think everything they do works. Mm-hmm. Like your feet haven't hung over the edge of the cliff for 3 years. Mm-hmm. And I hope they don't, but I think you're always going to see cycles. But, well, I can answer that question easy. It's this one. From 2020 on, I've had 3 years since we opened First National. And in that 3 years, I've had a lot of time to think. It's been the greatest 3 years of my life. People would go, hey, you were a thinker. I go, no, I wasn't a thinker. I was a problem solver. Mm-hmm. And problem solving took thinking, but I never sat back and said, hey, for the next month, I want to take time every day just to think on certain issues. Mm-hmm. And I did that. And one of the things that came up to me that I hadn't really recognized was just how fortunate I was in that heavy 10-year span for me. Call it 2008 to 2018, 2019. Interest rates were 3%. They weren't moving. Construction costs were so were so flat that we could literally start a project, move an application into HUD, write down all the construction numbers before we bid it, knowing we're going to be close a year later, we're going to be close. Right. So by the time we are ready to close, we bid the project, it's almost exactly what we projected because they weren't changing. Almost every deal I did was 40-year fixed rate, 3%. Interest rates weren't moving. All of a sudden, 2020 hits.
We talked about this, and I've said if you can't make a deal work under those parameters, you ought to get out of the business.
Yeah. So 2020 hits, and we're in the middle of First National. I can't get supplies. I got $8 million of custom-made furniture sitting in another country, and they can't get containers.
Yeah.
They're like, we can't get it to you, can't get containers. And if they did find one, it's 4 times more expensive. I consulted on a big project in Tulsa called Noma, big apartment wrap, beautiful. And the general contractor, we were barely done with plans. And he's like, hey, we need to order all the switchgear. What? He goes, switchgear is at least a year out. We did. It was still late. It's just a world that I'm so fortunate that I didn't have to deal with when I was doing $500 million of new apartments.
Yeah. So you started your construction on First National Center in 2000.
Charlie and I signed the contract January of 16.
Okay.
We closed January of 17. So we had a year of due diligence to make sure the building would actually withstand what we wanted to do. And we started demolition. Remember, we were the biggest asbestos job in the country. So we started asbestos and then demolition in 17.
17. So I'm with you. We've been through multiple cycles, financial crisis and different things, but COVID, starting in March of 20 to today, do you realize it's 5 years ago today? 5 years ago. And that has been the toughest cycle. And you were fortunate that you at least had some stability in those construction costs because you had contracts in place, did you not? Or did your construction costs elevate? Because from our perspective, our developments started during COVID, like Convergence. And then so we not only had in developments, we had rising construction cost, we had rising interest cost, both of those things coupled. So when you underwrite something, you have a $100 million project and you underwrite something at 5%, you end up being, your rate goes up to 8%. I'm not the smartest guy in the book, but that's 3% on $100 million. That's $3 million a year that you didn't account for.
Well, we started in 2017, but it took 3 years to get the building demoed and all the asbestos out.
Okay.
So by the time COVID hit, we didn't have financing. We're still bidding contracts.
Yeah.
So we got hit with all of it. And people ask me, well, how come you're so far over budget? Well, I use one example. We put out 21 bid contracts for mechanical and plumbing. We got one bid.
Wow.
No one would bid the job.
Why?
Just because it was so complicated.
Okay.
I went to the 3 largest mechanical guys in town, and they were all union. I knew them all, worked for one of them in college, and they said, Gary, we don't even know how to bid that job.
Yeah.
The irony is the mechanical plumbers union picketed me for 2 years for not hiring a union contractor. I begged your guys to bid the job. So it was 2020 started something we'd just never seen before.
Yeah. Yeah. All right. So let's talk about where we're going. Let's talk about the future. We've had a front row seat for 40 plus years in the commercial real estate sector. We both have done some things both locally and nationally. Let's talk globally first, not Oklahoma City. Let's talk globally. What are some national trends that you see right now that are favorable and some things that you're concerned about over the next 5 to 10 years?
Well, I've spent more time in the last couple of years studying geopolitics than I have my entire life. So I have a little sense of this. The world trade changed before Trump came along on his second term. I mean, this really started 10 years ago when the United States began to say, we're not going to protect every single country and every single ship that moves goods around. Apple, you get 90% of your parts from China. You might ought to start building some plants here.
Yep.
And while that's going to be hard for American companies initially, in about 10 years, you're going to see a lot more goods made in this country or in Mexico than you are in other countries. And that's going to be a huge boost for this country. It's going to be tough for about 10 years till we get those manufacturing plants up.
Yeah.
But once we start building a lot of stuff here that we're used to getting other places, I think you see a massive shift.
Gotcha. Yeah, I agree with you. So that onshoring is really important. So if you think about it, our country today is, call it 4% unemployment rate, in the fours or low fours. As those things happen, creates more job opportunities. So a lot of people today are worried about all the changes within the uncertainty in the political environment today, but we're also creating tremendous amount of opportunities that will allow us to continue to have the good paying jobs for all Americans.
100% agreed. My opinion is, and look, we're all just guessing. We lived, grew up, and for the last 1,000, 2,000 years, we've lived in a linear world. We could pretty well look back and project forward. 7-year cycles within a year or two. We're in an exponential world now. Things are changing so fast that we're all just guessing. I mean, the smartest people on the planet are just guessing. We don't know. We've never lived here. My personal opinion is once we get through the unstableness of how's artificial intelligence going to change industries, how's robotics going to change industries, there's going to be so many new jobs created. And I could see GDP going to 4%, maybe even 5%, which doesn't sound like a lot from 3%, but it would literally change the entire country and unemployment drop. But there's going to be a time of adjustment where people are going to have to go, hey, do I want to send my kid to school to get a degree in X? I tell my VOTEC people, you need to expand your facilities fast because those jobs are going to be really in high demand.
So I agree. There are always going to be market swings up and down and some rockiness, but I do believe we're on. One thing about Oklahoma City is, we have been fairly resilient in some downturns, and we've been on a fairly steady growth cycle, as opposed to experiencing significant ups and downs since the mid '80s, or really the early call it the '90s. From 2000 on, the last 25 years, we've been on a very steady growth cycle. What are you most excited about for the next 20 years here in Oklahoma City?
Good question. I haven't thought about this. For most of our career, commercial real estate, the quality's good, but we haven't seen this upshift in quality of particularly new products. I think it started with Devon Tower, 499 Sheridan, what you guys did at Convergence, O'Connor, First National, Citizen. I mean, I could name a few others that I think have elevated the quality of just real estate in general. Everything moved up. I think that bar being raised, and if I'm a younger developer, I mean, obviously I had people looking at me going, people aren't coming to First National on a Tuesday night to have dinner, Gary. They're just not. In 2016, when we started that project, I walk in there now, there's hundreds of people.
It's full, yeah.
And you throw $1 billion arena, world-class facility, and you begin to understand just how much the quality of product in this city. I think it's going to continue to happen. I think that will spur other people to continue to just push that envelope, and let's just see what we're capable of doing. Now, obviously, you don't want every project being built to be at the highest level. I mean, there needs to be. The other thing I would be excited about, it's because I'm passionate about it. I think that we're going to see a massive shift in how our city thinks about affordable housing. I hope to be a part of that. You can't raise half your city and leave the other half. You can't.
That's right. Great point.
You will fail.
Great point.
At some point, you'll look back and go, at what point did we think that was a good idea? So I like both of those.
I agree with that. And I think that we, as a city, our leadership in our city does a really good job of studying other cities and really understanding what they did good and some of the challenges and how they're battling that, so we can then make sure that we're navigating all of those waters. And I agree, affordable housing is really, really key, because we still, our rates aren't quite up to other cities like Denver or Dallas and stuff, but once you start to get to apartment rents at $250 to $3 a foot, it's a whole different ballgame.
Yeah, you've knocked out 40% of your population.
That's right.
They don't have an option.
Yeah. All right. What's next for you, Gary? You've You've tackled the biggest, one of the most significant projects in this city at the National. And you have done multiple consulting gigs, but where are you going next? What's your next big deal? This is the time to unveil. I don't even know what he's going to say. This is the time to unveil what it is.
Yeah, I should be totally transparent with you, shouldn't I?
You should.
Of all people.
You should.
Well, you know, almost probably only other person closer to me is my wife. I came out of First National incredibly unhealthy. Mentally and physically, I was a wreck. I had heart surgery in 2019, heart stents, and I knew instinctively that whatever happened didn't happen just from First National. The stress, COVID hits, you don't have financing, that's a problem. But I knew that I had to get healthy. A good friend of ours passed away in his office around this time. It really shocked, just caught me realizing that I've abused my body for 40 years. Mm-hmm. We grew up in the environment, you'll sleep when you die. We didn't respect sleep. We ate when we could. You grabbed it on the go. You'd go to church Wednesday night, come back to the office and work all night. It was just it's how we did things. And so I began to study health and wellness just for my own self. I needed to get healthy. Yeah. What came a result of that was not only did I get healthy, I became fascinated with just the concept of how do you stay healthy. Mm-hmm. We have a sick care system that's really good. If you're sick, there's plenty of places that can help you get not sick, and they'll even pay for it. Yeah. We spend more money in this country taking care of sick people than we do in any other arena, and that's not sustainable. Mm. And unfortunately, I was a part of that. I contributed to that. Right. So I wake up 3 years later, according to a lot of different biometrics, I've aged backwards 6 years and 3 years. Now, I don't think that's sustainable forever, but I told my wife one day, because my wife asked me, when are you going back to work? This using First National as a reason to kick back it works for a while, but it's time to go back to work. And I said, I'm not. I'm not going to do real estate. I now know how to keep my friends from dying, and I don't know what I'm going to do, but for the second half of my career, and I hope to live to 100 well, I'm going to be doing something in the arena of health and wellness. We know too much now, and AI is teaching us things that we just never knew before. Things are coming at us so fast that if we'll take advantage of them and realize that 95% of what happens to me is controllable. It's not hereditary. Yeah. And so I'm not answering your question. I don't know what that looks like.
You gave us a little bit to think about. So what I do know is, Gary, you're one of the greatest thought thinkers, and you're going to put your life behind it. You'll give a little to Michelle, but you're going to put your life behind it, and it will be successful. So anything you need from me, I'm here for you.
Well, you've always said that. I wouldn't be here without you. Yeah. The people that created my career, had you not called me in 1989 and said, hey, why don't you come over and sit with a cube next to me at CB? I've thought about this. I don't think I would have made it. I don't think I had back then what it took to make it through those early 80s into the 90s. But, I tell young guys call me and want to get advice, and I say, find your Mark Befford. Just meaning find someone that you can grab onto. Yeah. You and I were very fortunate. I think about the people who helped me. Obviously, it's you. But I think about Carl Edwards and Chuck Wiggin and Harrison Levy. And you and I got to enter an arena that already had great respect and credibility and honor that we did nothing to do. Right. And even as competitors, those guys would reach out to you. They'd call you. They'd help you. They'd do anything for you. And I think about that. That's what you're doing here. I mean,
Right.
you and I didn't talk about this before you started it, but you're basically going, how can I take my knowledge, push that on, and help the people that are coming up behind me, just like they did for us.
That's a good segue to something I want to kind of talk about here. We have taken different paths. So we started together back in the old Bedford Brooks Property days. That was the current name. And today, we're Robinson Park. You were there from the beginning, so you're part of our family, our team, and your wife, Michelle, is still our CFO today. She tried to retire, but we wouldn't let her. But
No, you wouldn't let her.
I wouldn't let. So I am.
She loves it here.
So I'm really, really proud of where we are today. And the reason we're called Robinson Park is this company and this firm is bigger than any one individual. It needs to survive. And there are the Gary Brookses of the world that we have in this organization that will continue to bring the legacy forward. I'm happy to say, effective January 1, we have taken our 3 operating companies, which is our investment management firm and our facility management firm and our brokerage firm, all 3 different names, combining it together into one firm now, and combining that with our development business. It's run by Megan Galmers, and now our design and build or construction department run by Hannah Law, combining all those together into one brand, Robinson Park. And I'm excited for that.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
So. I love that for you and your team, Mark. You didn't call me and ask my advice on that, but I would have said do it. Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'll confirm it after the fact.
Well, so Gary, this has been an awesome discussion today. So I want to kind of summarize it, and I wrote down a few key words today. And I think the key word is reputation.
Yeah.
You live and you're only as good as a reputation that you have. Number 2, you got to be resilient in this world because it is an ever-changing world, and you have to continue to adapt and be flexible. And finally, value. Adding value in whatever you do, don't just show up. You have to add value every day. So that is the real op of the day.
Can I tell you remind you of one last story?
Absolutely.
You've always thought of value.
Yeah.
When we were first starting out, you'll remember this because it's funny. You and I started doing it at CB, and we tried to push it onto our brokers when we started our firm. You had developed a 1-page analysis, and it was your way of breaking down when you represented a client, how much value did you bring versus what your fee was.
Right.
And
Oh,
I love that.
I remember that.
Because it forced you to think about, you got a fee, but how much value did you bring? And a lot of it was subjective, but it forced a broker to think, did I bring a lot more value than I actually got paid? That didn't stick with our brokers very long. They didn't think that was a good plan. But you've always thought that way.
And you took it one step further.
I don't remember that.
We end up on our invoices putting a statement that said, if you don't feel this is a fair fee,
I do
you're willing to pay whatever you believe we add value to.
Yeah.
Remember that?
That was crazy.
That was crazy. That was crazy. We're fortunate that we never got like a half a fee.
Giving a client an option to reduce the fee.
Right.
Yeah,
right. Okay.
Wow. Wonder if that'd work today.
I don't know. Maybe. Well, Gary, as I said earlier, this is our first episode.
Yeah, thank you for
really
having me.
honored.
It's fun.
I would not have had anybody else but you. And we started together, and we're moving forward together. Obviously, we're in a little different paths, but we still are best friends.
Love
you.
Yeah.
I love you too, buddy. So our second episode, and going forward, we're going to have different leaders, explore different things that really make commercial real estate successful. Our next episode, I'm going to have Todd McNeil. He's a managing director of IPA Capital Market. Yeah. He has done billions and billions of structured financing as well as capital sourcing for many, many clients around the United States, and including multiple projects for us recently, including He was one of the orchestrators with myself on the capital stack for Convergence, which has 8 different funding sources to put that deal together. So I hope everyone enjoyed the discussion today. You've learned something along the way. So the day's what you make of it. See you next week.